Welcome to Sleepy Classic Tales. Today we're telling The Moonlit Road by Ambrose Bierce, published in the year 1907. Three people tell of the same night: a son, a father, and a dead woman. Each knows only a piece of the truth, and only one who listens to all three can begin to sense what really happened on the moonlit road. Make yourself comfortable. Breathe calmly and listen. The first voice belongs to the son. I am the most unfortunate of all men. Rich, respected, educated, and of good health, furnished with all of that, many take me for a man favored by fortune, and I let them believe it, for the truth is not fit for table talk. What was taken from me, no one sees. It is my parents, and with them, the peace of my nights. I grew up in Nashville, the only child of Joel and Julia Hetman. My father was a well-to-do planter, my mother a beautiful, fine-nerved woman whom he loved with a love of which I now know that jealousy was its dark brother. Our house lay a few miles outside the town, off the road to Malton, in a garden full of old trees, a white, spacious house in which I had a happy childhood, if there is such a thing as happiness. I was 19 and studying at Yale when the misfortune came. A telegram from my father called me home, brief and without explanation, only, "Come at once." At the station, it was not my father who awaited me, but a distant relative, and from his face I read the message before he spoke. My mother was dead. She had been murdered in her bedroom in the night, strangled by an unknown hand. My father, so I was told on the drive from the station, had been expected back that night on the late train from Nashville, where business kept him. He had left earlier than planned, and because of a failure of the railway, he had missed the connection and gone on foot, through the darkness, up the road from Malton. So he reached the house only after midnight, and there, as he later testified before the coroner, he saw in the dark a figure at the corner of the house, a man who stole away from the rear of the building and vanished into the garden. He pursued him, lost him among the trees, searched, found nothing, and finally went into the house, uneasy, but still without suspicion. The door to my mother's room stood open. Inside, in the dark, he felt his way forward, and his hands found her on the floor, and found on her throat the marks of fingers that had pressed shut. The murderer was never found. No stranger had been seen, nothing was missing from the house, no motive could be imagined. What was left of my family moved back into the house after the funeral. My father and I, two silent men in wide rooms. And my father had become another man. My father had always been an upright, calm man, of that firm sort whom nothing throws off balance. But now, a shadow lived beside me. He hardly spoke anymore. He ate because food was set before him, and at night I heard him pacing through the corridors, hour after hour, with steps that hesitated before every door. When somewhere in the house a sound arose, a creak, a gust of wind in the chimney, he flinched and turned pale. I read it as grief, and as that nervous weakness which such a discovery in a dark room must surely leave behind in anyone. Today I know better, but I will not get ahead of myself. I tell what I saw. Some months after my mother's death, on a clear summer night, the two of us were walking home from Nashville, up the road from Malton, the same road he had walked on the night of the murder. The moon stood full. The world lay white and still. Our steps and the crickets were the only sounds, and I remember that our shadows glided long and black before us over the pale dust. We had almost reached the house, its white front already shimmering between the trees, when my father stopped. In mid-stride, as though he had walked into a wall. I followed his gaze. Before us on the road, a few steps away, in the full moonlight, I saw nothing. I say it as it was. I saw nothing but the empty white road. But my father saw. His eyes stood wide open and stared at a point. His face was the face of a man from whose heart the blood is retreating, and his hand gripped my arm and closed around it like iron. I asked what was wrong. He did not answer. I asked louder. I shook him. Then he drew back, step by step, without loosing his gaze from the empty road, and then he turned and ran into the woods beside the road, in among the trunks, without his hat, without a word, and the branches slammed shut behind him. I called. I ran after him. I searched half the night, and with the morning men from the town searched with me, for days, the country round about, the rivers, the woods. My father stayed vanished. No body was ever found, no trace, no letter, nothing. From that night on the Moonlit Road, I had no father anymore, as I had no mother anymore. The one a strange hand took from me, the other something I did not see, and to this day do not understand. I have been told he probably went mad and made an end of himself. Perhaps. But who then was the man he saw at the house on the night of the murder? And what did he behold on the road, there where, for my eyes only, moonlight lay? I do not know. I know only that ever since I fear the light of the full moon, as other men fear the dark. Part 2. Statement of Caspar Grattan. Today, I call myself Caspar Grattan. Tomorrow, who knows? Perhaps nothing at all anymore, for I feel that my road is nearing its end, and I am glad of it. Who I was before? I do not know. That is no figure of speech, it is my condition. 20 years ago, that is as far back as my memory reaches, I woke on a country road, a man without a name, without memory, without origin, with gray hair and a dread in the back of my neck whose cause I did not know. The name Caspar Grattan I gave myself at some point, because a man needs a name as he needs a number in the penitentiary. I have lived since then as one lives without roots. Here a piece of work, there a winter, nowhere a home, and always onward, for standing still makes the dread louder. But the darkness behind me is not entirely empty. There are images that come, unbidden, in the hours between waking and sleep, and whether they are memory or dream, I cannot decide. I will set them down, for they are all I have to leave behind. The first image, a white house under trees, a garden, evening light. I am at home there. I am a man in his good years, well-to-do, respected. There is a woman in this image, and when she appears my heart aches with beauty and with something else that I long could not name and that I know today. Mistrust. I love this woman as the drowning love the shore, and I do not believe her. No occasion, no deed, only this gnawing at every smile she gives another, this reckoning at every glance. The second image is a night. I have pretended a journey. I know in the image that it is pretended and feel no shame, and that is the most terrible thing about it. I stand in the dark before my own house like a thief and wait. I have come back earlier than I announced, on foot, so that no carriage should report me. The trap, I think, in this image, the trap is set. Tonight, I will have certainty. And certainty comes. At the rear of the house, a figure detaches itself from the shadow, a man who steals away and vanishes into the garden. I do not see him clearly, I scarcely see him, but I need no clarity anymore, for the gnawing in me has at last been given food, and it devours in a second every reason. What I feel in this image is not rage, as books describe it. It is something cold, purposeful, that carries me up the stairs, softly, 2 steps at a time, to the door of her room. The door is locked from within. That too, it thinks, in me. She has locked herself in because she believes I am far away. Now the bolt is her accuser. I set my shoulder against it. The old wood gives way, and I am in the room. It is pitch dark. The curtains are drawn. I hear nothing but my own blood. I feel my way forward, hands outstretched, and whisper her name, and no one answers. And this silence I take as the final confession. Then my hands find her. She has pressed herself into the corner of the room, crouched to the floor, and in the darkness I feel how she trembles. What happens then happens without a word. My hands find her throat, and in me there is nothing but this cold purpose, and I ask nothing. For questions might bring answers, and answers might shift the purpose. So insanely does insanity reckon. How long it lasts, the image does not know. It ends with the trembling ceasing, and the silence in the room having become another silence. Here the image breaks off, always at the same place, like a thread that breaks at the same notch. What came afterward, on that night, whether I fled, whether I stayed, whether I cried out or kept silent, of that I possess nothing. For 20 years I have told myself it is a dream, a recurring nightmare such as the sick have, a fabric of the mind. For a man would surely have to know if he had done such a thing, would surely have to know it. But then I ask myself why my life looks like a punishment. I live as the condemned live, without rest, without a place, with the one duty to go on. Something in me is serving a sentence for something I do not know, and the authority that pronounced the judgment sits in my own breast and does not show me the files. And there is the third image, the most recent, the only one that I can see is no fancy, for it has witnesses. One walked beside me. A country road in full moonlight, white as snow. I do not walk there alone. A young man walks beside me, and in the image I know. It is my son. We are walking toward a white house that shimmers between trees, and I feel heavy and dull, like one who returns to the place of his guilt and does not know it. And then she stands on the road. Before us, in the brightest light, a few steps away, stands a figure, and it wears the face of my dead wife. One must understand me rightly, for here lies the core of all that I am. It was no horror that stood there, no specter such as nursery tales paint, nothing threatening, nothing terrible. It was she, as she had been in life, distinct as a person of flesh, her face pale in the moonlight and full of— I force myself to write the word, for it is the word that destroyed me. Full of tenderness. She looked at me as she had looked at me in our best hours, with a gaze full of love and sorrow and something like a plea. And she raised her hands as though she would touch me or bless me or hold me. And in that moment, the curtain tore in me. For if she was dead and appeared to me so, Then the dream was no dream. Then the dark room was true, the bolt true, the trembling in the corner true, my hands at her throat true. And more than that, and worse, then this face, full of love, looked at the man who had strangled her. Do you understand, whoever reads this? She did not accuse. She did not come as a judge. She came as one who loved. And precisely that was the sentence that no court in the world could have pronounced. Hatred I could have borne. Revenge I would have understood. I would have held myself out to it. But to be looked at with those eyes, by her, after what my hands knew and my head would not know, that was more than a mind can bear. Mine broke on that road. I remember that I ran. Trees, branches, darkness, and behind me a voice called my name. The voice of my son, I believe today, but back then every sound was only part of the terror. Where I ended that night, and how out of the fleeing man became the one who woke 20 years later on another country road, without a name and without a yesterday, that I do not know. The doctors, to whom in kinder years I told fragments, spoke of a flight of the soul from itself. A mind that cannot bear something throws off the whole burden, the memory, together with the name, and begins empty. Perhaps. To me it sounds too clean. I believe I did not lose my knowledge. I only walled it in, and behind the wall it lives and knocks every night for 20 years. Now I have torn down the wall myself with this account. I feel that it was the last thing left to do. Wherever I now go, I go more lightly, for the heaviest thing is said. I have, without proof and without trial, in the only court that counts, recognized myself. May she, if the dead hear, know that her gaze arrived, later than intended, but wholly. Here ends what Caspar Grattan has to say, who once, as he believes, was named Joel Hetman. Part 3. Statement of the Dead. Julia Hetman, made known through the medium Bay Rolls. I had withdrawn early that evening, for my husband was away, and when he was gone, I slept badly. I was still lying awake, long after the house had grown still, and I do not know what hour it was when the fear came to me. One must understand how it was, not a sound first that makes fear, but fear first, which then listens for sounds. A pressure without cause, a knowledge without content. Something is in the house. I sat upright in bed and listened, and then I heard it truly. Steps. Soft steps on the ground floor, then on the stairs, slow, with long pauses, as though someone there were listening back for me. I sprang up and shoved the bolt across the door with flying hands and drew back into the corner of the room to the window and crouched down. Cry out I could not. The fear had taken my voice, as it does in evil dreams. The steps came up the corridor. Before my door, they stopped. An eternity was silence, in which I heard my own heart, and I was already beginning to hope. Then the door broke. The wood gave way with a crash, and someone was in the room, and I heard him breathe, and I heard his hands feeling along the wall, nearer and nearer, and I made myself small in my corner and prayed without a sound. And then his hands touched me. And then around my throat was a grip, and I wanted to scream and could not, and I wanted to beg for my life and could not. And the last thing I know of the world of the living is this darkness and this grip, and that I did not even know who was killing me. For that is the truth that you, the living, do not suspect. we do not learn it. What you have over us is the light. You see your murderers. I passed over, as one steps out of a dark room into another, and I took the question with me. Of what comes afterward, I can say what can be said, and it is little, for your words are made for your world. There is no night here, and no day, no nearness such as you know, and no distance. We are there, and you are there, but between us hangs a veil, and it has only few rare tears. We see you, faintly as through cloudy glass, like figures in a lighted room seen from the dark street. But you do not see us. And that, you, the living, is our true sorrow, yours and ours, that we stand beside you and you look through us, that we call and you hear a door rattle, that we want to touch you and you only shiver and walk on. Two people held me to the earth, my husband and my son, and I stayed where they were and sought a tear in the veil. I stood in the rooms of the house that had been mine. I stood at the table when they ate in silence. I walked beside my son when he could not sleep at night, and laid my hand on his hair, and he felt nothing. I saw my husband's grief and did not entirely understand it, for I did not know what he knew. I saw only that he suffered, and pity was all I had, and I could not even give that away. So I learned the patience of the dead, which is no virtue but a must. And then came the one night. I knew that the two of them were on their way, on the road up from the town. The presence of our own we feel, as you feel warmth. And on that night the veil was thin. Do not ask me why. There are hours in which the boundary grows worn like old cloth, and we feel it as you feel a storm before it comes. I stood at the edge of the road under the trees and saw them coming, two figures in the white light, my husband and my son. And then I understood. This time, they can see me. This time, it is enough. What I wanted was so little and so much: to show myself. To tell them a single time, without words, for words we do not have across the boundary, I am here. I am not lost. Do not weep so hard. I wanted to comfort my husband in his grief and to look once more upon my son with all that a mother is. I stepped out of the shadow of the trees into the full moonlight, into the middle of the road, and stood before them. And all the love that I had carried across the boundary, I laid into my face and into my hands, which I stretched out toward them. And my husband saw me. He saw me. At last, one of them saw me. And what then happened in his face I will carry as long as I am, and I do not know how long the dead are. The horror. A horror without bottom, as though the earth had opened before him and he drew back step by step and stared at me as one stares at horror itself. And then he plunged away into the woods, away from me, away. But my son, my boy, he did not see me. He stood an arm's length from me and looked through me at the empty road and called for his father. To the one invisible, to the other a terror. That was my homecoming. What I had wanted to give, comfort, became calamity, and why, that I did not know back then, for I did not know my murderer. I stood alone on the road in the moonlight and grasped only that I had failed at the one thing for which I had stayed. Since then, I seek them. The veil has grown dense again. My husband vanished entirely from my field of vision soon after, as though he had gone deeper than I can reach, and around my son I stand to this day like air. You who hear this, if ever on a bright road you shiver, if without cause your heart grows heavy, if you turn around and no one is there, perhaps someone is there after all. Perhaps someone loves you out of the dark and cannot find the tear in the veil. We stretch out our hands. We do not stop doing it. That is all the dead can do, to stand there and love and wait for you to look at us once, a single time. Truly. That was our short retelling of The Moonlit Road by Ambrose Bierce. 3 voices, 1 night. A son loses both his parents without understanding. A father recognizes himself and breaks apart on it. And a dead woman wanted nothing but to comfort and became a terror. The whole truth none of them has. Only you have it, who have listened to all 3. And perhaps that is the quietest comfort of this story, that behind many a terror there stands nothing but love that found no way. Good night, and if you like, we'll hear each other again tomorrow at Sleepy Classic Tales.